Have any of you seen the movie Mean Girls? Okay, cool. So you know what judgment looks like, right? Three girls as the stars, four girls who they end up categorizing a whole school into their sections and stereotyping them into the geeks, the jocks, the nerds, the band group, whatever you want to call it. We've all been in situations like this. They've got their burn book throughout the whole movie. They're judging. The whole movie is about them being judgmental. They even have this whole scene where they confess their judgments to one another and then trust fall into each other while they're still judging each other. And even in my own life, even as young as 7, I had a run-in with like my best friend Philippe. We used to play basketball. He was my next door neighbor, and I would play basketball. My whole driveway was made of like solid rocks. So if you want to learn how to play basketball really well, play on that, because like you bounce the ball and it's like boom, boom. It just goes everywhere. So really what happened was we were playing on these rocks, and obviously we weren't the greatest because we were 7, we were learning, and talk about a challenge, right? And so we would tell each other like, you suck, man. Like, you need to work on it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to cross you over. Next week, I'm going to break your ankles. And so we started judging each other's game. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Sometimes like, ooh, your form's getting good. But sometimes we really judge each other. Like, man, that was awful. Brick, you know what I'm saying? Man, can we get a wake up, guys? No, just like, but so we would judge each other. And one time, man, we just started judging each other so hard, I threw the ball right at his forehead. Boom. Hit him in the forehead. He came up to me. He swung. Boom. And then I took his shirt. Boom, boom. All over the fact that we said we didn't like each other's game. That's what judgment can lead us to, guys. Just ridiculous 7-year-olds getting in a fist fight. But reality is, guys, we have these statements in our life. Non-Christian or Christian alike, we have these statements, right? Our world is plagued with judgmental mindsets, and we say things like what? Don't judge a book by its cover. Not a wrong statement. We say, don't judge me until you've walked a mile in my own shoes, or my shoes, however you say it. Don't judge my story by the chapter that you walked in on. Or as famously quoted on Tupac's chest, only God can judge me. You know what I'm saying? But listen, we use it as a weapon, guys. We use it as a weapon because we don't want to get called out. And honest to God, most of the time, when we get called out, we want to call it judgment more than just being held accountable. And so really, Matthew 7, if you turn to Matthew 7, verse 1 and 2, is Jesus' way of saying how we should judge, how it looks. And Christians and non-Christians use this as a weapon, but we're going to look into it today about what Jesus is saying to us and what he's saying about judging just in general. So let's look at this. Matthew 7, verse 1 through 2. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judged others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So let's address an elephant in the room, right? Who can judge? Well, by first looks, not necessarily sure. Don't judge, or you too will be judged. Okay, don't judge. All right, can the Father judge? Can Jesus judge? I'm not sure. Well, I think the supporting context of this verse will allow us to see that we are, as Christians, able, and God gives us parameters to what judging and being critical in a situation can look like with the right heart posture. I believe the context speaks to that we don't just pass off judgment completely and we let everything go, but that judgment actually is allowed in certain scenarios, and that God gives us an ability to do that in the right way. And so, again, we're in the Sermon on the Mount, guys. We've been through it. But the Sermon on the Mount here is informing us. This section is the first time Jesus starts directing us in human-to-human interaction, right? So Beatitudes, life discipline, how we should give, fast, and pray. That whole section was about our relationship to God and God to us, right? We hit the prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, right? He speaks to our relationship with him and his relationship with us. And then we come to this section where he's teaching us how we should judge people. But like how we should do this is informed by the whole pre-context here. If I know that blessed are the poor in spirit, for they will inherit the earth. And I know blessed are the meek, for they will inherit. And if I know blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And if I'm living a life of giving, fasting, prayer, and I'm disciplined to Jesus, then there's a heart posture that takes place that allows me to be in right standing and right relationship with God so that I judge correctly. And so we're going to look at a synoptic gospel. We're going to go to Luke 18. And so Luke 18 is in context with parables that Jesus is using along with his text on Sermon on the Mount in Matthew. And so he gives an example to what he's speaking about judgment. He says in Luke 18, verse 9, to some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. For I fast twice a week and give a tenth of all I get. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but he beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and who humbles themselves will be exalted. Yeah. Jesus is attacking the Pharisees again. And if the Sermon on the Mount is a boxing match, Jesus is Muhammad Ali, and all his enemies are getting knocked out, right? The Pharisees don't stand a chance, and he keeps coming after them. Why? Because they've got a spirit of religion. They just want to follow the law to the T, and they want to be right because they want to have the right way to do things, and they actually want to be everybody else's savior. They want to be the man. They want to know. They want to know everything the right way so that everybody can look to them. And Jesus said, nope. He's been addressing them since passage 5, right? Since chapter 5, he's been addressing them. And so we need to judge if we're going to judge from a place of right relationship with God in humility and kindness, right? That Pharisee had no kindness or place in their heart. And maybe you've done this in your own life. God, thank you, I'm not like that. Ooh. Come on now. Be honest with yourself for a second. Think about it. You may have not said those exact words. Maybe you went, woo, okay. Or maybe you just said, ooh, ooh, and you did it all in your head. We still did it. But we need kindness. And if we don't judge in a place of kindness, right standing with God and humility, we judge in a place of hatred and anger. And guess what? In verse 1, Jesus says it. In the same manner you're judging, you will be judged. So I want to look at 3 ways when we are in right relationship with Jesus, we judge well. But 3 ways we judge when we're not in right relationship with Jesus. And the first one, when we're not in right relationship with Jesus, we end up judging superficially. Right? So let's all talk about David real quick. I want to give biblical context and real context here. So David being anointed king, 1 Samuel chapter 16. We're going to look at just 2 verses, but they'll give you the setup. Prophet Samuel, God speaks to Samuel and he says, go to Jesse's house. I want to anoint the new king while we're under King Saul. Samuel's like, okay, we're going to anoint a new king while there's still a king. He's going to get mad. And Jesus is like, I got that all figured out. So he says, take a sacrificial lamb, take it to Jesse's house. It'll look like you're going to pray together. And he gets to Jesse's house. He brings the lamb in, and all the sons line up except for David. And Jesus speaks to Samuel and says, go through, God speaks to Samuel and says, go through all the sons. And so he walks up to the first son to anoint him as king. And 1 Samuel 16, 6-7 says, when they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord. And if you think of it the way I do, he just looked at Thor. just long blonde hair, just strapped, he's just busting out his chest, six-pack abs, like when you put those like the rope on a ham and it just lines it out, you know what I'm saying? And he's looking good. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Right? There's some biblical context for you about judging superficially. Let me give you some living proof that we all judge. You see that? That is a confused 12-year-old. Okay? I grew up in a mainly black town in Illinois, and then I moved to a melting pot of diversity in upstate New York. I am confused. I know I'm a little bit brown, but I don't know where I land because all my friends are black and we grew up hanging out all the time. And then I hung out with some Mexicans and some Asians. I was like, we all got different vibes. I don't know who I am. Like, why is my hat turned? Like, what? Why am I wearing, what is this? Guys, what is this? I don't know, but I know as soon as that picture came up, just like I did, I judged it. Like, listen, guys, we all have superficial judgments, and they're usually informed. Yeah, okay, great, that's off. Okay, they're usually informed by our past, by our childhood, right? Our trauma. We have opinions on how we think things should look, especially the way people dress, the way they live their lives. But we don't want to understand at all. Guys, like it's well aware, we all know that socially, we have problems judging. People have done social experiments for years now and put them on YouTube where a guy has like a Ferrari and he's just got like outlandish, like a briefcase of money. And then like people want to talk to him, but then like 20 minutes later, he stands in the same spot with a cart and like puts dirt on his face and wears an outfit that's not as great and people ignore him. Socially, we know we judged and we do judge. But guys, like, it goes beyond that because it's not just like, I don't like your outfit. But we look at an interaction between a husband and a wife. We look at an interaction, like I get judged in the store all the time because I've been down and I get in my daughter's ear and I tell her assertively what I need to do. And sometimes other parents don't like assertiveness. And I'm sorry that offends you, but that means you don't like the way I do it, so you're gonna judge me. But we have I'll say it this way. We like to be understood, but we struggle to understand. And so we quickly judge situations just because we think, you know what, I know it. I know better. I know how this goes. I know this and that. No, you don't. How about you understand a situation before you go ahead and judge it? Jesus says that we'll be judged in the same manner that we judge. And for some of us, that might be a scary thought. Second way we judge wrongly when we're not in right relationship with God is that we judge hypocritically. Yeah. Let's look at Matthew 7, verse 3 through 5. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. So again, context here, right? Like he's further confirming that he's not telling us you can never judge. You have to just let everything go. He's confirming here, just if you're going to judge in relationship with me, make sure you take the plank out of your own eye, and then read it again. And then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. I find that most of the time in my own life and in most society, that the places we harshly judge is our greatest weakness. No, when I was 18, I just graduated from high school, 2014, whoop, whoop, that'll give you my age. But I had just graduated high school, and I've said it here before, I had my crew, my ride or die crew. We were dumb and young. And we had this building on, like, if you can imagine Wadsworth, like, we had a Wadsworth type road in our town in upstate New York. And there was this building, and it had like end to end, like a taco shape. And it was a car dealership. So we go to that car dealership, we skated all the time. But now that we were graduated from high school, we were real cool. We were really tough. And so one night we decided, and instead of just skating this thing, we're gonna bust in here. And we're gonna see what it looks like on the inside. And if you don't know, guys, that's called breaking and entering. And that can be a felony, okay? So we found an AC unit, boom, busted it out. And all 6 of us walked in, and what did we do? Phones out, turned our flashlights on. It's on a main street. There's windows everywhere. It's a car dealership. And so we're in there probably like 10 minutes, and finally we get to the showroom. The showroom is like the size of this room in a triangle with just glass everywhere. And we're like, oh, it's so cool. We found some couches. We're all just sitting there with our phones flashing at each other. And then all of a sudden, yonk, 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 4 cop cars. Boom. We all bolt. We're done. We're done. We're going to get arrested. So end up, all 3 of us, all 6 of us end up running away. Only one of us doesn't get caught. All the rest of us are tackled and arrested. And we go to the town jail where we get handcuffed to a wall by the ankle and the wrist. And I end up sitting there, and I had to make the dreaded phone call at 2 a.m. Hey, Mom. I know for sure I wasn't calling my dad. I'll tell you that much. Hey, Mom, could you come get me? Well, where are you? What are you doing? Well, please don't be mad. But listen, I'm in jail. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I can't. So anywho, she comes and gets me. And just for your own pleasure of what, if you've ever done this in your life or you ever have a kid in your life, I hope this doesn't happen, but just for your own pleasure, what my mom said, to make you laugh, I'm going to tell you. I walked up with the police officer. My mom walks in to come and get me, and the police officer says, ma'am, just to let you know, this would have been a Class D felony, and I could have sent him to county jail tonight, but I gave him a Class B misdemeanor. He'll work it off with volunteer hours. I was like, oh, good, but I was still like really slug. And she looked at that police officer, and she looked at me, and she goes, maybe you need to go to jail. You're my mom. You're supposed to love me, man. What are you talking about? But anywho, a few days later, I call my mentor. So at the same time I'm doing all this dumb stuff, I'm a worship leader. Like I've been leading worship. I lead worship like 3 Sundays out of the month. I play on the band. I play for the records. I do all the whoop, blah, doo-dah, everything with music. I do it. And so I get convicted though. And I said, you know what? I messed up. I was living a little bit of sin, and I messed up. I did this dumb thing, and I want to go talk to my mentor and let him know what happened. And so I do. Why? Because I knew that he had come from a lifestyle of drug use. He had been arrested before. He dealt with alcohol. We both had tattoos we didn't like, and we had made dumb decisions. And so what I was looking for was a mentor to understand and speak life into me. But unfortunately, I unfold this scenario to him and tell him how the Lord has convicted me and how the Lord has spoken to me, and I need to be accountable, but I also need to be loved. And I was met with harshness. I was met with, oh, well, you're off our team for 6 months, and you will not play, you will not sing, you will not do anything. And even if you agree with that decision, what he did was wrong in the sense now he went and spewed his mouth to his whole pastoral staff and his whole team, and I got the cold shoulder. I wasn't met with kindness or gentleness. I was met with gossip and judgment. And yet, this man has been through what I've been through. Guys, don't get so far over the hill that you forget where you've come from. People need your kindness and understanding. Yes, you can keep someone accountable and critically analyze something and go, that's wrong. But you need to remember that you were redeemed by a Savior and that you were once broke, you were once homeless, you were once in some kind of mess, and God brought you out of it, and somebody needs that understanding and needs your testimony before they're judged.
Yeah. Amen.
And guys, and this plank in our eye is not just like when I first read this, and I remember my childhood learning this verse, like the plank in the eye, I remember was like, well, I can't call out pornography if I'm in pornography, and I can't call out gluttony if I'm in gluttony. And it's not just sin for sin. I can't call out this sin if I'm in sin. But actually, the plank in your eye is the self-righteousness that you think you know it better, that you think I'm so far gone from that, I have no understanding of that anymore. That you get so clean that you don't need Jesus anymore. Wow. That you can do it in your own strength and your own ability, but God says, no, that's a giant plank. And guess what? That brother of yours, that's a speck compared to that. Yeah. What are we doing, family? We get together, and even on our own Sundays, we judge each other. We do. And in our own life, we judge hypocritically. Again, we seek to be understood, but we aren't quick to understand, guys. And we need to understand each other. And I want to look at Galatians 6:1-2. You don't have to turn there, but you can if you want to. The verse says this: brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit, let me repeat that, you who live by the Spirit, should restore that person gently. Yeah. But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. Amen. Usually when we start judging hypocritically, it's because we want to be the Savior and fix it for people. We want people to be fixed and look the way we want them to be. Remember, our judgments are usually formed by our childhood, our past, our trauma, our hurt, our experience. You want to talk about hurt? I've been through church hurt, man. I've been through it. That's why I've got so much grace for it. That's why I've got so much understanding to sit and talk through church hurt with people. But what your church hurt or what your life hurt doesn't do is give you the license to spew on people about how people are terrible and you'll never be redeemed and you'll never have good and you'll always be bad. No. That's your view and opinion. That's your judgment based on your lifestyle. Not everybody's got to be a negative Nancy. But listen, guys, you can look at that situation and say, here's the bad, here's the good, let's understand, and let's find common ground in it. We don't have to be so left and right about some things. When Jesus is clearly saying there's an understanding, there's a grace, and we need not to judge unless we're going to be judged in our own way. And Jesus specifically, guys, is not just saying like, don't judge. I really see this verse as speaking to us about you can judge, but don't be caught up in an identity crisis of judgmentalism. Yeah. You can judge, but your lifestyle doesn't need to be you to be judgmental. And so you need to hear the heart of the Father over you first before you just start living your life that way and it becomes who you are. Because guess what? We're far too good at going home and talking garbage to ourselves. You want to know why we're so judgmental? It's because we judge ourselves at home. You're going to judge really, really strongly in public. Why? Because you judge yourself in private. You go home, you look in the mirror, you put the outfit on. Man, I like that. I look terrible. Well, if you're going to tell yourself you look terrible and you're God's creation, you have no problem spewing on another God's creation. Let's call it out, guys. Like, how do you expect to speak well about somebody if you can't speak well of yourself? This is not an identity to be judgmental, but it is a call to critically analyze and see things rightly within God's eyes so that we can hold each other accountable in the church. That's good. Lastly, the third I want to say is that when we are not in right relationship with God, we end up judging with misplaced standards and expectations. 1 Corinthians 5, verse 12. Just give you a little context before I read it. Paul is writing to the church of Corinth, and Corinth is stuck in some nasty sexual sin, some incest. They're going all over the place. And Paul is calling out them as a church, saying this is wrong. This isn't okay. But there's a weird mix-up in the happenings because some of you are Christians and some of you are not. So he addresses this. What business is it of mine to judge those outside the church? Are you not to judge those inside? Okay, Paul, what are you saying here? What business is it of mine to judge those outside of the church? Why? Because God is judge. Are you not to judge those inside the church? Okay, so clearly there's a place here that we have to hold each other accountable, to judge a situation, to say, okay, well, this person is in sin. Okay, let's hold that accountable. Guys, we have no problem judging a situation when it's like far left. Like we love judgment when it's wrong, but we're like, I don't want judgment. We love judgment when it's like the good side of things. Like we're like, oh, I judge you in a way like you should be. Oh, you look like you have money. You look like you have a good life. They judge you, but you just have no problem because they didn't hurt your feelings. But we really have a problem when we judge wrongly, and especially guys like when we judge in the church. And what business is it of mine to judge those outside the church? And we judge inside. Guys, we have no problem casting judgment on the Christian who says they profess Christ, but they slander people all day. They come in the church and they don't look like Christ. We have no problem judging that. But yet we're not taking all the principles into account here. We're not checking our hearts. We're not checking ourselves. And yet we call that out. I'm not saying we shouldn't call that out. What I'm saying is we're really quick to judge it and put our own standard on it when we haven't met the standard. And clearly verse 1 says that we're going to be judged with the standard of which we judge. So, what I'm talking about with misplaced standards is that most of the time, us as Christians like to put God's standards on people who are not in the church. And do I think? Yes, the gospel should be represented and preached and proclaimed 100%. Is God going to redeem this world and it will be his kingdom finally? Yes. But for you to judge and just Bible thump people, I'll get into a little context of what I'm meaning, just the heart posture of self-righteousness over people who don't even live by your own standards, it's not your job. It's not. And so, unfortunately, we have people in our world, let's just talk about a hot topic real quick. We have people who are LBGQT, whatever, plus, and they live in this world. They don't live by God's standards, but the first time they're met with God's standards is Westboro Baptist holding a sign saying God hates blah, blah, blah. That's not a representation of the gospel. Guys, we need grace and truth. Neither exists without the other. That's right. Your grace informs the truth that you can never be perfect. So you in grace, God has been perfect for you. And so truth says you need to be perfect, but God says, I've fulfilled that. And then when we allow just grace to be there, but we don't speak truth into that, we just sin and sin and sin because God just forgives everything. God just is fine with everything. Why would he be mad about it? He's fine with it. He loves me so much. Truth is, sin can separate you from God, but by Jesus' death and resurrection, you have relationship with God, guys. So when we talk about judgment and misplaced standards, like, let's be honest, we live in a world where our adjectives are now informing our nouns. Guys, so we got a lot of black Christians. We got a lot of politically correct Christians, progressive Christians, conservative Christians, gay Christians, trans Christians, whatever you want to call it. But let's go to grammar class real quick. Your adjective informs your noun. And so now you put Christian in your lens. And now you judge people based on your lens. No? Let's be honest with each other. When I'm a black Christian, All I want to do is inform people about the injustice, which is not wrong. But then I cannot hear a white Christian's problems because they'll never be met with the struggle I've gone through as a black Christian. But let's reverse that really quick, guys. When we allow Christian to inform the adjective, we then get a holistic view. We now get to be in our person and we get to go, Christ has informed the gay. Christ has informed the black. Christ has informed the progressive.
Yeah, that's right.
Guys, conservative is not about you voting for Donald Trump. Your president, whether you're left or right, doesn't matter. Jesus is your king. Let Christian inform your politics. Let Christian inform your views before you go judging something.
Come on.
That's good, Sam.
That's good, Reverend.
So listen, guys, like, I'm not here to just lay down the gauntlet and tell you you're terrible. We all, let's talk about it. We all judge. Maybe some of us struggle with it more than others. Maybe some of us don't struggle with it as much, but we all judge. And guess what? God is the judge, and if this is a courtroom, we're all guilty.
Come on.
And so today, as we hear about judgment, as we talk about how we will be judged if we judge others, and that we are hypocritical in our standards, and that we like to pull the plank out of our own eye, and we like to call out others, and we like to put standards on people that they're just being judged from and they're not being met with the gospel. We're all guilty. And thank God, God is a good judge.
Yeah.
He is just. He is right.
Come on, man.
He vindicates. And guess what? If God is a good judge and you're guilty, he convicts you.
Yeah.
And he says, life sentence. But his son, you ever seen those movies where like last minute, court's coming down, boom, the hero comes in? Jesus is your hero. He walks in that courtroom last minute. Come on, church. He walks in that courtroom last minute and he says, you know what? They've got life. I'll take it.
Come on.
You know what? I've done my whole life so well that they don't have to deal with that life sentence. I've done perfectly with my life so that it can be imputed. Let's use biblical language here. It can be imputed onto you even though you don't deserve it, even though you're unworthy, even though you're a wretched sinner. I am paying the price for you.
Yeah.
And so guess what? You walk out of that courtroom free.
Come on.
The judge should have judged you, but instead the Son took the cup of wrath and judgment for you. And that, again, does not mean we abuse grace in the absence of truth.
That's right.
Or we abuse truth on people in the absence of grace. We need grace and truth
That's right.
from our Lord so that we hold this beautiful tandem in our lives that, yes, we can judge, but best we understand first. Best we seek out people first. Matthew 7, verse 6. Let's look at this last verse. Do not give dogs what is sacred, and do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet. They may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. If you're like me, you read this and like, huh? For a second? And you're like, I'm not totally there. What does this have to do with judgment? It does. Dogs and pigs, just in context, Jews they shunned dogs and pigs because they were like scavenger dirty animals. And then the pearls represent the good news of the gospel. And so in judgment, in this context, Jesus is speaking to our discernment. Because friends, when you are informed by Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, when you judge, you should first ask him. You should be informed by him first, and then by his lifestyle, humility, kindness, gentleness, approach the situation. Clearly right here, there are people who are evil, who are against the gospel. And yes, you present the gospel, but we use discernment, and that if we continue to just use the gospel and, so to speak, let wolves in sheep's clothing eat the pack, then we have not done our job discerning and judging the situation well. For some of us, it's to water. For some of us, it's to plant. And for some of us, it's to reap. And so, in this context, don't cast your pearls before swine. Don't give the gospel over and over and over and over to someone who's clearly in the hands of Satan, who will then use it to destroy you and others. Use discernment. Guys, there are real wolves in sheep's clothing. There are real people who come to church professing Christ, looking to tear down the church. And you need to use discernment and judge rightly in the heart of kindness and goodness and grace and the heart of Father, Son, and Spirit, and make decisions well-informed decisions that are informed by Him. Because guys, like when we go around spewing our opinion and we start judging out of our own experience and that's it, then we hurt people. We hurt ourselves. God the Father speaks over you. We've talked about it. Our Father who art in heaven, He speaks over you that you are His child. Jesus, the Son of God, the Lamb slain for you, speaks to you and says, I am the sacrifice for you. I atone for everything. And the Spirit speaks and says, I empower you to walk this life out. And so we come from that place when we judge, guys. Clearly the context is saying, you don't have to not judge at all. If you do judge, know that it's in the same manner. So approach with understanding, just as you would want. Approach with kindness. Guys, we can call out sin and still struggle as long as we have a conversation with one another and actually we're not so puffed up in our self-righteousness that we allow others to call us out. Guys, let's stop calling accountability judgment. When someone comes to you and calls you out and says, hey, your life is not meeting what you profess, that's not judgment, that's accountability. And you need to be held accountable for the name you speak over your life. If you want to profess Jesus Christ, but you want to slander, mock, and throw people down, nope, you're going to be held accountable for that. And our job as the church, I hope that we understand that our job as the church to be the community together is to spur each other on in love, to push each other towards Christ, to look more like Him, to become more like Him, and let Him disciple us. That means we have to let others call out our problems without getting offended, without saying you're judging me. Only God can judge me. Nope. If you want to profess Christ, your brother and sister in Christ can call you out.